He said he was taking his mother for a drive. He didn't mention it would be her last ride home. Before sunrise, the ocean breathes like a sleeping animal. In and out, in and out. The jetty on the New Jersey barrier island looks like a black spine pushing into the Atlantic, slick with spray, studded with iron cleats that taste of salt and rust. A compact pickup rolls to a stop and kills its lights. The wind keeps talking. The sea keeps answering. The passenger door opens with a tired creak. A woman in her late 60s, wrapped in a thrift store parka that was warm in the store and thin out here, sets her shoes carefully on the wet concrete. Her name is Nora Bennett. She has the hands of someone who kept other people's lives together, faded burns from casseroles, little nicks from a lifetime of knives and envelopes. She leans on the doorframe and catches her breath like the cold just surprised her. "Hang tight, Mom," the driver says. His voice is gentle and far away at the same time. Ethan Bennett, mid-30s, union jacket, forearms like someone who lifts more boxes than weights. He steps around the truck as if he doesn't truly want to be seen moving. "I'll be right back," he says again, like a line from a show he's not sure he's still in. Her answer is small. "Okay." The air bites. It fills her mouth with salt and a faint taste of gasoline. Out on the water, a late-night trawler crawls toward the inlet, a single orange eye sliding across the dark. Somewhere behind them, a metal road sign shivers on its post. The world feels like it's holding its breath. Ethan's phone vibrates. The screen blooms cold blue against his palm. Kayla. Even the name looks bright and sharp in a place this dark. He answers without looking at Nora. "Yeah," he whispers, turning away from the wind. "We're here." A pause. The voice on the other end is flat and intent. No space for friction. No space for doubt. "Don't hesitate. Do it." Ethan swallows. His jaw works at nothing. "Right." He pockets the phone and opens the driver's door. He doesn't look back. He doesn't say, "I'm sorry." He doesn't say, "I love you." He says nothing at all, and the silence hurts more than words could. The engine turns over once, twice, and catches. A red taillight smears across wet rock. The truck eases away, then goes faster, then is gone, swallowed by the curve of dunes and the long, empty road. Nora watches it until the color disappears. Then there is nothing to watch but gray. The night has edges again. The wind finds the seams of her coat and fingers them open. She lowers herself onto a concrete cleat because standing makes her heart flutter and sitting makes it slow. She lifts her chin and closes her eyes and listens to the old, complicated language of waves hitting stone. This language knows her. She grew up in a mill town beside a river that made the same sound when spring came and the dams ran full. Water remembers. Her breath shows up in white puffs and then disappears like it never happened. She rubs her hands together and presses them to her cheeks. The skin there feels like paper that's been folded too many times. She knows what's happened. She knows without anyone saying it. The knowledge sits down next to her on the jetty and doesn't pretend to be anything else. People don't vanish at once. They go in increments. First the small corrections. "Don't do the laundry, you shrink things." Then the jokes that aren't jokes. "We should put you in bubble wrap." Then the sighs. Then the meetings she isn't invited to. Doors close softly. The quiet rearrangement of a house that used to belong to her into a place where she is in the way. Nora looks down at her shoes and thinks about how many steps she took in them inside that house. The pantry, the stove, the back bedroom with the window that sticks. Zoe's drawer because Zoe can never find socks. Zoe's voice. "Grandma, where do spoons live?" "They live in the second drawer from the sink, sweet pea, and you know that." The cold does what cold does. It starts at fingertips and toes and climbs the rest of her like a slow, stubborn ivy. She tucks her hands into her sleeves and wills her body to keep its heat. She tells herself the story older women know how to tell without drama. This will pass. It has to. You've gotten through worse. She thinks of a time in '88 when Daniel lost his job and they ate oatmeal and canned peaches for a month. She thinks of their first apartment where the heat quit on Christmas Eve and they burned every candle they owned until the room looked like a church. She doesn't think of the way Daniel left a year ago. She has thought about that enough to wear a groove in her mind. A gull lands 3 feet from her, cocks its head like it expected a French fry, and got a grandmother instead. It snips at a strand of dried seaweed and then leaps away. Nora pulls the blanket of night closer around her shoulders and waits inside the noise of the ocean. Time gets weird when you're alone in the dark. It loosens and sags. It tightens into a wire. She tries to count waves and loses track. She tries to pray and can't find a place to start. She lands on something simple. Let it not be my fault. Let it not be my fault that my own boy set me down on a rock and drove away. Let him wake up in an hour with a pain in his chest that says, turn back. The wind shifts. It comes at her now with a wet lip. She tastes rain that isn't here yet. Her teeth tap once, twice, like a signal. She tells them to stop. They don't listen. Behind her, far down the road that curves behind scrub and dune grass, a sound begins like a secret being told, a low, careful engine note, small, familiar. Headlights throw pale bars across the stones and pull them back. The truck is not Ethan's. It is older, its paint dulled by years, its headlights slightly cross-eyed. It rolls to a stop with a driver who knows how to stop short of a person without scaring them. The engine cuts. The ocean rushes in to fill the quiet. A door opens. Boots touch the jetty. The man who steps out moves like someone who has spent a lifetime getting out of trucks, one hand on the frame, one palm flat on his thigh to balance. He wears a coat that used to be brown and a knit cap that used to be navy. He carries a wool blanket from the cab, the real kind, heavy enough to mean it. Nora, he says. The name comes to her like a thing she had put on a shelf and dusted. She knows that voice. She knows the shape it makes in the air. She knows the weight it has when it says her name. It hurts her more than the cold did a moment ago. She blinks. The face she sees is carved up fine by weather and trouble. The beard is grayer. The eyes are the same. The mouth is the same mouth that kissed her in a Civic Center gym in 1977 when a cover band played Landslide, Too Slow. She remembers thinking even then that he kissed like someone who meant it. Daniel, she says, and her voice comes out easy, like the ocean said it for her. He wraps the blanket around her shoulders without ceremony, like a farmer blanketing a horse that matters. He tucks the ends in. He doesn't ask her what happened. He doesn't ask why she's here. He doesn't ask about Ethan because he already knows the answer to that. He says only, let's warm you up. She stands because he is there and because bodies know when it is safe to move. Her knees argue. He steadies her with a hand under her elbow, the way he steadied her when she misstepped on the basement stairs 10 years ago, the way he steadied her when Zoe was born and she cried harder than the baby did. He helps her into the passenger seat, with a patience that ignores the clock and the cold. The interior smells like coffee and old wood, and the faint, sweet hint of pipe smoke he promised to give up, and finally did last spring. The heater breathes warm air at her shins. She puts her hands to the vents and feels life come back in small, embarrassed ways. They don't talk at first. There is a kind of silence that feels like a roof. He starts the engine. The truck idles, then pulls away soft as a hand, leaving a shoulder. The headlights unspool the road in front of them. The dunes hunch and then fall behind. The island motel with the neon fish slides by, awake and sad in its off-season way. A stop sign blinks uselessly at an empty intersection. The ocean stays on their left, faithful and loud. Nora turns her head and studies his profile like a map she once drove by memory. Lines she knows, lines she doesn't. She wants to ask the question that has been standing in her like a second spine for a year. Why did you leave? But the words won't do what she asks them to. They sit down and fold their arms. She swallows and settles for another question. How did you know I'd be there? Daniel keeps his eyes on the road. His hands rest on the wheel like he trusts it and it trusts him. We'll talk when you're warm, he says, the way he used to say. We'll talk when I'm off the ladder. First things first. The heater hums. The wipers tick once to shoo away a spit of salt. Out past the jetty, the ocean throws one long, perfect line of white against the dark that looks like a piece of lace. The sky has begun to turn from black to something with color in it, a bruise lifting. They pass a sign for the county road and another for a church supper that happened last week. They turn into a narrow lane lined with cedar, the kind that rakes the sides of a truck if you're not careful. The cottage that comes into view is small and ordinary and feels like a held breath exhaled. A thin thread of smoke lifts from the metal chimney. Someone left a porch light on for later, and then never turned it off. Daniel parks and kills the engine. The sudden quiet inside the cab makes the ocean sound farther away than it is. He looks at her now, full on, the way people do when there is something to account for and something to keep. "I'll get the door," he says. She nods, because she can't think what else to do. He is here. He is not supposed to be here. He left. He is here. These facts live together in the same small room now, and she will have to sit with them until they learn to share. He circles the truck and opens her door. The air cuts again, but the blanket holds. He steadies her across the porch boards that complain just enough to be honest. He unlocks the door with a key he didn't have a year ago. Warmth spills out a wood stove, orange and sure. The place smells like pine cleaner and bread that was baked yesterday and coffee that will be made soon. Inside, on a little table by the window, a kettle waits. A cast iron one, old as a promise. Daniel moves toward it like a man doing something he has planned down to the second. He nudges more wood into the stove. He sets the kettle on. The metal gives that high, hollow ring that makes homesick people cry. Nora stands in the doorway, wrapped in wool, the Atlantic still caught in her hair. She watches the man who left a year ago move inside a house built to receive her. She wants to ask everything at once. Outside, the ocean keeps breathing. Inside, the kettle begins to murmur. But when those headlights stopped in front of her, the man who stepped out wasn't supposed to exist because he'd been dead for a year. The road hugged the shoreline, the horizon bleeding from black to gray. The old pickup's engine hummed like it was keeping a secret. Inside, Nora sat rigid beneath the wool blanket, fingers buried in the folds, as if afraid the warmth would vanish if she loosened her grip. The heater rattled, and the clock on the dashboard blinked 5:13 in the morning, a time too early for forgiveness, too late for excuses. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. He hadn't said her name again. He hadn't said much of anything. His profile was carved in half light, his beard almost completely white now, his jaw tight like a man who had run out of second chances. Nora stared at him, disbelief slowly turning into something heavier recognition. "Daniel," she whispered again, more to test the air than to reach him. He glanced over just long enough for her to see how many years had passed between them. "Drink this," he said, reaching into the console. A thermos, coffee lukewarm, bitter, and merciful. She took it, the smell alone strong enough to wake old mornings. "How did you—" "I said we'd talk when you're warm." The way he cut her off wasn't cruel. It was final, like closing a door on a draft. They drove past the empty bait shop, the boarded lifeguard towers, and a diner that would open in another hour for people who still believed in beginnings. The world outside was quiet, the kind of quiet that follows a storm or a fight that can never really be taken back. When the tires finally left the asphalt for gravel, Nora realized where they were headed, the narrow lane that wound behind the marshes, where the houses were small, old, and patient. She remembered the place. They had spent one anniversary out here, back when Daniel was still Daniel, the man who could fix anything with his hands, even a broken toaster, even her moods. Before the pension ran thin, before the words between them got sharp, before he left a note on the kitchen table that said, "Don't wait up." He parked beside a one-story cedar shake cottage, the kind that forgets to lock its doors. A string of Christmas lights sagged along the porch, still plugged in though the season had passed. Nora hesitated before stepping out. Her knees trembled, stiff from the cold and something deeper. Daniel came around, opened her door, and held out a hand. She didn't take it right away. Inside, the cottage was small but alive, a fire crackling in the wood stove, steam whispering from a kettle. The smell of pine and bread hung in the air. He guided her to a chair near the warmth. "Where have you been?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "A whole year, Daniel." He crouched to poke the fire, the orange light cutting across his face. "I had things to fix," he said, "things that broke long before I left." "Fix?" She laughed once, brittle. "You disappeared." "I disappeared," he agreed quietly. "But not from you." He set 2 mugs on the table. The cast-iron kettle groaned, metal against flame. It was the same sound she had heard 100 mornings before he vanished, back when routine was their only religion. "I thought you were dead," she said. "For a while I was." She searched his face for irony. There was none, only truth phrased in a language she no longer spoke. They sat in the hush between sentences. The stove popped. The ocean murmured through the window glass. "Daniel," she said at last, "if you left to punish me, you've done it. You can stop now." His eyes lifted to hers. "I didn't leave to punish you, Nora. I left to find out who was hurting us." The words didn't make sense until she saw the envelope half tucked beneath his coat on the table. Brown paper, thick, labeled in his handwriting. Bennett, Ethan divided by Kayla. She froze. "What is that?" He didn't answer. He just stared into the fire like it might explain for him. Outside, the wind shifted again. The kettle whistled once, sharp as a scream swallowed too soon. He reached over, turned off the stove flame, and said softly, "Tomorrow morning you'll understand everything." Nora's throat tightened. "What happens tomorrow?" Daniel stood, slipping on his coat. "Someone's going to learn what they did." The screen door creaked as he stepped out into the dim, leaving her alone with the envelope, the dying fire, and the ocean's endless heartbeat pressing against the walls. She looked toward the window. The horizon was beginning to burn gold. And as the first light touched the sea, Nora realized Daniel hadn't just come back to save her, he had come back with a plan. By the time the sun climbed fully over the horizon, the sea had turned from steel gray to bruised blue, and the cottage smelled like toast and cedar smoke. Nora sat at the small wooden table, hands cupped around a mug that had long gone cold. Daniel moved quietly behind her, setting plates down, slicing fruit, the way a man moves when silence has become a language. She studied him in the morning light. He looked older, thinner, like life had scraped him down to the essentials. The lines at the corners of his mouth weren't from smiling anymore, they were from holding things in. "I don't understand," she finally said. "What could possibly need fixing that you had to disappear for a year? Without a word?" Daniel didn't look up. He buttered toast with mechanical calm. "Because if I'd stayed," he said, "they would have buried me alive before you." The sentence hung between them like smoke. "Who?" she asked, though she already knew. The answer had Kayla's perfume all over it, cheap sweetness trying too hard. He met her eyes then. "Your son," he said quietly. "And his wife." Nora flinched. "No." "Yes." He reached across the table and slid the brown envelope closer to her. It was heavy, thick with paper and dread. She didn't open it. Not yet. Daniel leaned back, exhaling through his nose like a man still trying to believe his own words. "Do you remember the savings account we had? The one tied to my pension?" "Of course. It's gone." Nora blinked. "Gone?" "Drained. Over months. Small withdrawals, disguised as automatic payments. Spa visits. Online orders. I started noticing before I left. They thought I was losing track, that I wouldn't see the patterns." Nora's chest tightened. "Kayla?" "She was smart about it. She used your son's name on most of the transactions, so on paper it looked like him, but he didn't know, at least, not at first." Daniel rubbed his palms together, staring at the wood grain of the table. "I confronted her. She smiled, said she was building a brand, that we should be proud of her." His tone turned to steel. "Then she told me I was just a retired old man living in a house she planned to remodel." The words hit Nora harder than she expected. "I thought if I left," Daniel continued, "maybe Ethan would wake up. Maybe he'd remember who raised him. But then the calls stopped coming, and I knew you were still there between them. Alone." Nora looked toward the window. The ocean glittered, bright and heartless. "So you watched us?" He nodded once. "I never stopped." She remembered the strange things over the last months, the sound of a truck engine at night, the neighbor mentioning a man who asked about her from a distance, the feeling of being seen when she hung laundry outside. It hadn't been paranoia. It had been him. "Why didn't you come back?" she whispered. Daniel's jaw flexed. "Because watching was safer than being inside that house. Safer for you. Safer for what I was building." He stood, walked to a small cabinet near the wall, and pulled out a small recorder, black, unremarkable, the kind used by insurance investigators. He pressed play. Voices filled the tiny room. Kayla's sharp, commanding. "She's in the way, Ethan. You know she is. You can't move forward until she's gone." Ethan's hesitant, small. "She's my mother." Kayla. "Then do it for me. For us. Just take her for a drive. Somewhere quiet." Nora covered her mouth. The sound was worse than any wound could be. Daniel let the recording run for another 10 seconds before shutting it off. That was 3 nights before the jetty. Nora pressed both hands to her face, trying to contain everything, anger, disbelief, a sadness that had nowhere to go. "He wouldn't. He couldn't." "He did," Daniel said, soft but sure. And you lived because I knew exactly where he'd take you. Her head snapped up. You knew? I set it up. The words cracked the air. He sat back down, his gaze steady. I needed proof, not just suspicion, not just rumor, proof. So when they told him to take you somewhere quiet, I made sure I was waiting there first. Nora's heart thudded, slow and heavy. You planned this? I planned to save you, Daniel said, and to make sure they couldn't hide behind pretty photos and smiling lies anymore. The house was silent except for the soft hiss of the fire. She wanted to scream, to ask why he hadn't told her sooner, to demand how far he'd go to expose them, but her voice wouldn't come. She just sat there, listening to the sea claw at the rocks beyond the window. Daniel reached over and placed his hand on hers, calloused and steady. Nora, this isn't over. The police will know soon. But before that happens, I need you to decide something. Decide what? He hesitated. Whether you want them punished or forgiven. The words cut through her like cold water. Forgiven? After everything? After being left to freeze on a jetty like discarded trash? She didn't answer, she couldn't. Daniel stood, pulling his coat from the chair. I'll be back tonight. You'll have until morning to decide. He moved to the door, but before stepping out, he paused and looked back at her eyes, filled with something between sorrow and conviction. Whatever you choose, Nora, it changes everything. He left, the door shutting softly behind him. The cottage filled again with the sound of waves, the whisper of wind, and the small hum of the recorder still sitting on the table. Nora stared at the envelope, then at the door, then at the sea that had nearly swallowed her whole. The camera lingers on her face, lit by the fire's last orange flicker. Her hand hovers over the recorder. She presses play one more time. Kayla's voice returns, clearer this time. Just take her for a drive, somewhere she won't come back from. And as those words echoed through the room, Nora finally understood Daniel hadn't just been watching them for a year. He'd been building a case. Across town, morning light spilled through the wide windows of a polished suburban kitchen, the kind of place that smelled more like candles than food. White marble countertops. A ring light still standing in the corner, its halo unlit. Kayla Bennett was sitting at the island, scrolling through her phone with the sharp, controlled motion of someone measuring her own worth in likes. Her reflection stared back from the screen. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect lie. In the background, Ethan poured coffee, his movements heavy, automatic. He didn't look at her. He hadn't looked at her much since that night. Did you post it? He asked quietly. Kayla's manicured thumb stopped mid-scroll. Post what? The update. About my mother. She smiled thinly, that influencer smile she used when she was performing kindness. Of course. Missing person alert. Hashtags. Concerned emojis. It's getting traction already. Ethan set his cup down too hard. Coffee sloshed onto the counter. Traction? Kayla didn't flinch. Awareness, Ethan. That's what people respond to. Empathy drives engagement. He stared at her like he was looking at a stranger. She's not content, Kayla. Neither am I, she said, still smiling, her tone brittle. But one of us has to make this work. From the living room came the faint sound of colored pencils. Zoe, their 9-year-old daughter, was sprawled on the rug, drawing. A family of stick figures holding hands under a lopsided sundae. One of the figures had no face. Daddy, she said softly, when's Grandma coming back? The question landed like a shard of glass between them. Ethan opened his mouth but nothing came out. Kayla was faster. She went on a little trip, honey, somewhere warm. Zoe frowned. But it's winter. Kayla's voice sharpened just a fraction. She needed a break, sweetie. Go finish your drawing. Zoe looked down at her paper. After a moment, she reached for the crayon labeled gray and began shading the faceless figure darker until it was almost gone. Ethan turned away, his jaw working, breath unsteady. Kayla went back to her phone. Notifications kept flashing, heart emojis, questions, comments. Hope she's safe. You're so strong. Stay positive. And then, one comment that made her freeze. You shouldn't lie about family, Kayla. She blinked, scrolled down, and saw another. We know what happened at the jetty. Her thumb hesitated over the screen. The words felt too precise, too knowing. She looked up. Ethan, did you tell anyone? He was staring into his coffee, eyes dark and hollow. No. Kayla frowned, refreshing the post. More comments were appearing cryptic, accusing. The ocean remembers. Truth always comes home. "Who's doing this?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He was staring past her now, at the family photos lined up on the counter, Kayla, Ethan, Zoe, and Nora, smiling at last year's Thanksgiving dinner. He picked up the frame and turned it over so the picture faced the wall. Kayla noticed. "Why'd you do that?" "Because I can't look at it." She laughed once, forced and small. "You're being dramatic." He turned, voice low. "You told me to do it. You said it would just be a few hours. You said she'd be fine." Kayla's smile faltered. "And she is fine. She must be. Otherwise we'd know." "Would we?" Ethan asked. That question hung there, heavy, unanswered. From the couch, Zoe's voice came again, softer now. "Mommy, someone's outside." Kayla's head snapped up. "What?" Zoe was pointing toward the front window. Between the white curtains, a shadow crossed the driveway, slow, deliberate, the shape of a man. Kayla stood, her pulse spiking. Probably the mailman. Ethan moved to the window, careful, uneasy. The driveway was empty, except for their SUV and the trash bins by the curb. No one there. He frowned. Nothing. Kayla tried to laugh it off, but her fingers were shaking. She scrolled back to her phone, desperate for something familiar, controllable. But the post she'd made, the one about Nora being missing, was gone. Deleted. "What the—" she muttered, refreshing again. Nothing. It had vanished completely. "Did you delete it?" Ethan asked. "No." "Then who did?" She didn't answer. A notification flashed on her screen, an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "The truth always uploads itself." Her throat went dry. She opened it. Inside was a single attachment, a video file, labeled 4:17 a.m., the jetty. She dropped the phone like it burned her. It clattered across the tile, screen still glowing. Ethan picked it up, his face drained of color. Kayla could barely whisper. "What is that?" He looked at her, voice breaking. "It's us." On the phone screen, frozen in perfect clarity, was the image of Ethan's truck parked at the jetty before dawn, red taillights fading into darkness, and Nora still standing there, watching him leave. The video played in silence, except for the faint hiss of wind over the microphone. The picture was shaky but clear enough. Ethan's pickup truck idling by the seawall, headlights off, engine growling low. The timestamp in the corner read 4:17 in the morning, exactly as the email had promised. Then came the sound. Kayla's voice, soft, detached, commanding. "Don't think, just do it." The image shifted as Ethan got out of the truck, opened the passenger door, and helped his mother to the ground. Nora stepped onto the concrete, wrapped in her old coat, her hands trembling in the cold. She said something too quiet for the microphone to catch, but her tone was gentle, trusting. Ethan nodded once, then turned away. The camera zoomed closer, almost lovingly, as the red lights flared and the truck rolled forward, shrinking into the distance. Nora's figure grew smaller and smaller until she disappeared into the dark. The screen froze on that frame, the moment between motion and stillness. Ethan couldn't move. His hands hung at his sides, the phone still playing in his palm. Kayla stared at the video like it was some terrible magic trick she couldn't undo. "Where did this come from?" she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know." The phone buzzed again. A second message popped up beneath the video. No sender name, no signature. Only 6 words. "Truth has a way of returning." Kayla's voice cracked. "Is this a threat?" Ethan didn't answer. He was staring at the screen like it had finally said out loud what he couldn't. Zoe's small voice came from the living room. "Mommy? Daddy? Why are you crying?" Neither of them turned. Ethan swallowed, wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Kayla, this video, how would anyone even have it? No one was there." Kayla's pulse was hammering. "Maybe a camera from the pier, maybe a drone." He gave a bitter laugh. "You think the government's tracking us?" She didn't laugh back. "I think someone is." Outside, the wind was picking up, pushing against the windows with a hollow rhythm. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. Kayla jumped. Ethan pocketed the phone and grabbed his keys. "I'm going to the police." "What?" "No." "Are you insane?" she hissed. "If you show them that, they'll know what we did?" He cut in, eyes flashing. "Yeah, Kayla. They'll know. Maybe that's what's supposed to happen. She reached for him, but he was already heading for the door. "You'll ruin everything," she said, her voice sharp, panicked. "You'll ruin us." He stopped at the threshold. "We're already ruined." The door closed behind him. Kayla stood alone in the quiet kitchen. For a long moment she just listened to the wind, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of Zoe humming to herself in the next room. Then she turned back to the phone, still on the counter. The screen was black now, the email gone, replaced by a single line of text. "Do not delete what you owe." She grabbed the phone, her breath coming fast. "Who are you?" She hissed at the glass, as if the screen could answer. "Who's sending this?" But no reply came. Instead, another notification blinked into view this time, from social media, her own account. A new post had appeared. Not written by her. Not scheduled. A video upload. Kayla opened it, hands shaking. It was the same clip, the jetty, the truck, the betrayal, but now it was live on her page, under her name, to all 37,000 of her followers. Within seconds, the views started climbing. 10, 50, 100. Comments poured in faster than she could read them. "This can't be real. That's her, that's Kayla. Oh my God. She left that old woman there." She tried to delete it. The app froze. She tried again. Nothing. The post wouldn't move. Her phone vibrated so violently it almost fell from her hands. The screen flashed one last message. A notification from an unknown number. "You can't erase what's already seen." Kayla stumbled backward until her knees hit the stool behind her. The kitchen felt smaller, the air thicker. From outside came the low growl of an approaching engine. Tires on gravel. Then headlights cut across the front windows, steady, deliberate, stopping in the driveway. Zoe's voice floated from the living room. "Mommy, there's a truck outside." Kayla's heart slammed against her ribs. She looked toward the door, every muscle rigid. Ethan wasn't back yet. Someone else was. Through the frosted glass, a familiar shape moved toward the porch, broad shoulders, slow step, and a coat she hadn't seen in a year. The man who was supposed to be dead was coming home. The knock came once firm, deliberate, not the sound of a stranger. Kayla froze halfway between the counter and the doorway. Her mind told her not to move. Her body didn't listen. She crossed the room in small, trembling steps. The frosted glass on the door glowed with white daylight and the shape of a man standing on the other side. Broad shoulders, heavy coat. A stillness that felt practiced. "Ethan," she called, her voice thin. No answer. She tried again. "Ethan, is that you?" The silhouette didn't move. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. When the next knock came, slower this time, it vibrated through the frame and into her ribs. Behind her, Zoe's voice carried down the hall. "Mommy, who is it?" Kayla forced a breath, pasted on the voice she used for videos, the one that pretended everything was fine. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Go to your room, okay?" Zoe hesitated. But now, tiny footsteps pattered away. Silence settled like dust. Kayla reached for the lock, hesitated again, then opened the door just enough for daylight to slice across the floor. The man on the porch raised his head. Daniel Bennett. Alive, breathing, real. The last time she'd seen him, his photo had been on a missing person flyer thumbtacked to the bulletin board at the grocery store. His eyes now were the same, gray and calm, but they carried something new, intent. "Hello, Kayla," he said. His voice was quiet, like it had been built for bad news. Her throat closed around his name. "Daniel. What? How?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her like she was a headline he'd already read. Then he stepped forward, one boot on the porch, one on the threshold. "We need to talk." She backed up automatically. "Where's Ethan?" "Coming," he said simply. He needed time to understand what happens next. Kayla's hands tightened on the edge of the door. "I don't understand any of this." Daniel's eyes swept the room, the ring light, the phone on the counter still glowing with notifications, the brand new kitchen that looked more like a set than a home. "You will." He walked past her, slow, certain. His presence filled the room like weather. She could smell salt and cold on his coat, the ocean he had come from. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What do you want?" Daniel turned to her, eyes steady. "The truth." Kayla gave a laugh that cracked halfway through. "You think this is about truth? You disappeared. You left your family. You left her." He didn't blink. "And you left her to die." The words landed like a slap. Kayla's shoulders went rigid. "She's alive?" Daniel's expression didn't change. "You sound disappointed." Her mouth opened, closed. She stepped backward until she hit the counter. "No, I didn't mean." He walked closer, slow, unhurried. "You thought she froze out there, didn't you? That the sea would take her, quietly like a secret." Kayla's breathing hitched. "I thought Ethan—" Daniel cut her off with a look sharp enough to stop words midair. "Ethan made a mistake. But you planned it." For a moment, only the wind moved outside, pushing at the windows like it wanted in. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and set something on the counter. A small black recorder, the same one he had shown Nora that morning. Kayla stared at it, recognizing the shape before her mind caught up. "What is that?" He pressed play. Her own voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "She's in the way, Ethan. You know she is. You can't move forward until she's gone." Her knees almost gave out. That's not me." Daniel tilted his head. "Then who is it, Kayla?" "I was angry. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word." She shook her head violently. "You can't prove anything." Daniel leaned on the counter, calm as stone. "I don't need to. You already did." He turned the phone on the table so the screen faced her. Her own social media page filled the display, her smiling profile photo beside the live video of the jetty. The comments kept climbing, line after line of outrage, disbelief, condemnation. Kayla's voice broke into a whisper. "Who's doing this to me?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at her phone, then back at her. "Justice doesn't always come from courtrooms, Kayla. Sometimes it comes from people finally seeing what you did when you thought no one was watching." He picked up the recorder and slid it back into his coat. "You wanted an audience. Now you have one." Her eyes darted to the window as if she could still run. "Where's Nora?" Daniel's tone softened just slightly. "Safe." "Safe?" she echoed. "Safe where?" He didn't reply. Instead, he looked at her the way a man might look at a storm forming on the horizon, sad, inevitable, and long overdue. "You should get a lawyer." The words hit like ice. Kayla's breath caught. Are you going to the police?" He stepped toward the door. "No, the police are coming here." He opened the door halfway, the cold air flooding in, rustling the papers on the counter. "Daniel, please." He stopped, turned back. "If you really want to help your family, start by telling the truth before someone else does it for you." Then he was gone, swallowed by daylight and wind. Kayla stood frozen, the sound of his footsteps fading down the walk. The video on her phone replayed itself in an endless loop. Nora on the jetty, Ethan driving away, the sea swallowing the rest. Zoe appeared at the hallway's edge, clutching her drawing. "Mommy, who was that man?" Kayla turned slowly. "No one," she whispered. "No one at all." But the lie tasted like rust in her mouth. She looked out the window again. The driveway was empty. Only tire tracks in the wet pavement proved he had ever been there. Then the phone vibrated once more. A new notification. An email from an unknown sender. Subject line, tomorrow. Kayla tapped it open, her pulse racing. Inside was a single sentence. "You will see her again." Her heart stopped for half a beat. "No," she whispered. And as the screen went black, the reflection staring back at her wasn't her own, it was Nora's, faint and waiting, in the glass. That night, the storm rolled in from the Atlantic, thick clouds pressing low, the kind that makes streetlights look like candles drowning in fog. Wind howled through the chimneys, pushing salt air into every crack of the Bennett house. Ethan came home past midnight. His face was pale, his coat soaked. He didn't speak when he entered, just dropped his keys on the counter and stood there, breathing hard, staring at the blinking light on the answering machine. One new message. Kayla sat on the couch, knees drawn up, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a disguise. "You shouldn't have left," she said. He didn't look at her. "The police know." Her body stiffened. "What?" "I showed them the video." His voice was quiet, flat. "They didn't say much, but they'll find her. Or they already have." Kayla shook her head. "You shouldn't have done that. We could have fixed this." "Fixed it?" He finally turned, eyes red. "You mean bury it deeper?" Lightning flashed. painting the kitchen walls white for a split second. When it faded, Kayla was standing, her blanket slipping from her shoulders. "Daniel came here," she said. Ethan froze. "What?" "Your father. He was here this morning, alive, he knew everything." He took a step closer. "That's not possible. I saw him." Her voice trembled. "He said the police were coming. He said I'd see your mother again." Ethan's mind scrambled to catch up. "You're saying he's alive?" "Yes, and he's not alone." Ethan looked toward the window, as if expecting to see headlights out on the street. "What did he want?" Kayla's eyes darted to the phone on the counter. "He didn't have to want anything. He already has everything. The video, the recorder, the proof. He's been planning this for a year." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't he come to me?" "Because you're part of it," Kayla snapped. "Because you did it." The room went quiet. The only sound was the wind rattling the windows. Ethan's voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Don't you dare put this on me, Kayla." She stepped closer. "I didn't drive her there. You did. And you told me to?" The words collided, sharp and final. They stared at each other, two people bound together by guilt they couldn't share or escape. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. "You think this will just go away?" he asked. Kayla laughed bitterly. "It already hasn't." Her phone buzzed again. Both of them turned toward it. A new notification. An email. She hesitated before picking it up. Ethan could see her hand shaking. "Don't," he said quietly. She opened it anyway. From unknown sender. Subject: she's coming home. Attachment: one video file. Kayla tapped the screen. The clip began instantly. It wasn't the jetty this time. It was inside a house, a small one, with wooden walls and warm firelight. The camera panned slowly. A woman sat by the hearth, wrapped in a blanket, staring into the flames. Nora. Alive, breathing, safe. Ethan's knees went weak. "Oh my God." Kayla couldn't look away. Nora turned her head toward the camera, eyes calm, almost gentle. Then she spoke. "Kayla," she said softly, "I forgive you." The screen froze there, Nora's face half lit by firelight, her voice lingering in the air like incense. Kayla backed away from the counter. "This isn't real," she whispered. "This can't be real." But Ethan's face said otherwise. "It's her," he murmured. "She's alive." Kayla pressed her palms to her temples, trying to drown out the echo of that voice. Why would she forgive me?" Ethan's answer came like a sentence. "Because she's not the one seeking revenge." A crash interrupted them, a sharp bang against the front door, so loud it made Zoe scream from her room upstairs. "Stay here," Ethan said, grabbing a flashlight from the drawer. The knocking came again, harder this time. "Dad?" Zoe's voice trembled. "It's okay, sweetheart," Ethan called back. "Stay upstairs." Kayla stood frozen near the counter as he moved to the door, every step deliberate. He opened it just an inch. Rain swept in, cold and heavy. No one on the porch, only the storm. He stepped outside, shining the beam across the driveway. Empty. Then, as he turned back, he saw something taped to the doorframe. A plain brown envelope soaked around the edges. His name scrawled across it in Daniel's handwriting. He pulled it off and stepped back inside. Kayla's voice shook. "What is it?" Ethan opened it. Inside were photographs, grainy, printed stills from security cameras. His truck, the jetty, the timestamp, 4:17 in the morning. There was also a single note, written in Daniel's steady hand. "Tomorrow, we end this." Ethan stared at the words, the ink running from the rain. "He's coming back." Kayla's voice broke. "To do what?" He looked at her, eyes hardening. "To finish what we started." Thunder rolled across the sky like an omen, shaking the windows in their frames. Zoe called down the stairs, her voice frightened. "Mommy? Daddy? What's happening?" Neither of them answered. Kayla looked out the window and gasped. Down the street, through the veil of rain, two headlights glowed in the dark, steady, unblinking, waiting. And as the lights inched closer, Ethan realized this wasn't the police. It was his father, and he wasn't coming to talk. The storm never really stopped that night. It just changed its shape from rain to wind, from silence to pounding on the roof like a warning no one wanted to hear. By dawn, the Bennett house felt smaller. Every window hummed with pressure. Every clock ticked a little too loud. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table, the brown envelope still open in front of him. The photos were spread out like evidence in a case he couldn't close. The words, "Tomorrow, we end this," stared back at him, written in his father's hand, ink smeared but legible enough to sting. Kayla hovered near the sink, clutching a mug of coffee she wasn't drinking. The light under her eyes was bruised purple. "Maybe we should leave," she said quietly. "Leave?" Ethan looked up, eyes hollow. "Where? You think you can outrun guilt?" "This isn't guilt anymore, Ethan," she snapped. "This is someone coming for us." He leaned back, ran a hand through his hair. "It's my father. He won't hurt us." Kayla's laugh was sharp, nervous. "Won't hurt us? He set you up. He leaked the video. He's been playing God for a year, Ethan. If he's not here to hurt us, what's left?" Ethan didn't answer. His mind was somewhere else at the jetty, in the dark, hearing his mother's voice swallowed by waves. He stood suddenly. "Where's Zoe?" "Upstairs, still asleep." "Pack her things." Kayla froze. "What?" "Just do it. We'll go somewhere else. Away from all this. Away from him." "And then what? Start over? Pretend this didn't happen?" He turned on her, voice low but shaking. "We can't undo it, but I can stop him from deciding what happens next." Kayla saw something in his face, not anger, not guilt, but resolve, a quiet, fatal kind. "What are you planning?" "Whatever it takes to keep Zoe out of this." She stepped toward him. "You think he'll come after her?" Ethan looked out the window. The driveway was empty again, but fresh tire tracks carved through the mud. "He already is." He grabbed his jacket and moved toward the door. Kayla's voice cracked. "Ethan, don't go. Please." He turned back. "He's my father. This ends with me." The door slammed. Outside, the wind sliced across his face, carrying the faint metallic taste of salt from the ocean. He followed the tire tracks down the road, past the houses that looked asleep but weren't, the blinds shifting just slightly, like people watching without wanting to be seen. He walked until the asphalt gave way to gravel, and gravel turned into wet sand. Then he saw at the same jetty, the same stretch of sea where everything had begun. A figure stood at the end of it. Long coat, still posture. Daniel. Ethan stopped halfway down the concrete. "You could have just called." His father didn't turn. "You wouldn't have answered." The waves slammed against the rocks. Ethan took another step. "You've made your point. The world hates us now. Kayla's broken. You won." Daniel turned then, his face marked by sleeplessness but calm. "You still don't understand. This was never about revenge. Then what the hell was it about?" Daniel studied him the way only a father could, with disappointment and reluctant love mixed into one impossible look. "About truth. About what happens when people forget what family means." Ethan's voice cracked. "I didn't forget." Daniel's tone hardened. "You left her, Ethan." "I came back." Daniel's jaw clenched, after she almost froze to death. The words hit like a punch. Ethan looked down, the memory clawing its way up his mother's breath, visible in the dark, her whisper, "It's okay, son." He had believed her. That was the worst part. Daniel's voice softened, almost breaking. "She still forgave you." Ethan looked up, eyes wet. "I saw the video. She's alive. She..." Daniel nodded. "She's alive, and she's leaving." "What?" "She's moving inland. Far from this coast, far from the house where she was left behind. She deserves that peace." Ethan's throat tightened. "I just wanted to tell her I'm sorry." Daniel stepped closer. "Then tell her, but don't lie this time." Ethan's voice fell to a whisper. "You hate me." Daniel shook his head. "No, I hate what you became when you stopped standing up for the people who loved you." They stood there, father and son, with the ocean roaring between them like judgment itself. Ethan finally said, "So what now? You're just going to destroy everything Kayla built?" Daniel's gaze sharpened. "Kayla destroyed herself. I just let people see it." Ethan took a step forward. "She's still my wife." "Not for long," Daniel said. "The police will arrive by noon. There's evidence of neglect, financial abuse, public defamation, everything. She'll face what she did." Ethan clenched his fists. "And me?" Daniel looked at him for a long time, then said quietly, "You'll face what you didn't do." Lightning flared behind them. Thunder broke so close it shook the pier. For a moment, both men stood frozen, 2 generations caught between justice and forgiveness. Then Daniel said, "Go home, Ethan. Be a father to Zoe before she learns what kind of man you've been." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a car engine roared behind him. He turned. Down the coastal road, Kayla's SUV was barreling toward the pier, headlights cutting through the mist like blades. "Kayla!" Ethan shouted. "Stop!" The vehicle didn't slow. Daniel grabbed his arm, pulling him aside just as the SUV skidded onto the concrete, tires screeching. Kayla slammed the brakes, the car spinning halfway before stopping just feet from the edge of the jetty. She jumped out, rain whipping her hair against her face. "You think you can take everything from me?" she screamed. "My family, my life, my name?" Daniel's voice was calm but cold. "You took those things from yourself." "Shut up," she yelled, pulling something from her pocket, a phone shaking in her grip. "I can fix this. I can tell them it was all a lie." Ethan moved toward her, hands raised. "Kayla, stop. Just..." But she wasn't listening. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You upload another lie and you'll never see your daughter again." Kayla's breath came in gasps. "You can't stop me." The wind screamed through the pier. The phone slipped from her wet hand, clattering across the concrete. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then it vibrated once and the screen lit up by itself. A new video was playing, not one she'd recorded. The image showed her, standing exactly where she was now, screaming, rain pouring down like a live reflection from somewhere outside time. Kayla stumbled backward, eyes wide. "What is this?" Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's the truth catching up." The phone slipped off the edge of the pier, falling into the black water below, and when the screen vanished beneath the waves, the reflection of 3 figures remained above, staring down at where everything began. For a long time, none of them moved. Only the sea did, black and endless, swallowing the glow of the phone as if it had been waiting all along. Kayla's hands were shaking. She looked from Ethan to Daniel, her voice barely a whisper. "This isn't real. You're all trying to make me crazy." Ethan stepped closer, rain dripping off his jaw. "Kayla, listen to me. It's over. We can't undo it, but we can stop now." "Stop?" Her laugh broke halfway through. "You think this ends because you say it does? The internet doesn't forget. They already hate me. They're calling me a murderer, Ethan." Daniel's voice cut through the wind, firm, heavy. "They're calling you what you made yourself." Her head snapped toward him. "You think you're some kind of saint? You disappeared. You left her, left your son, left everyone to rot, and now you show up pretending to be God?" Daniel didn't answer. His eyes said everything. "You're not wrong, but you're worse." A crack of thunder rolled across the water. Kayla flinched. For a split second, Ethan saw not a villain but someone cornered by the monster she'd built herself to survive. She whispered, "Do you know what it's like to be invisible? To live in someone else's house, with someone else's mother telling you how to raise your child, how to cook, how to breathe? She never saw me." Daniel took a step closer. "So you decided the world should stop seeing her too." Kayla's eyes filled with tears, rage, fear, something in between. She had everything: respect, love, the perfect son. And I had scraps. I was tired of being a ghost in my own life. Ethan's voice cracked. "So you made someone else disappear?" Kayla turned toward him, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted space, Ethan. I just wanted quiet." The wind shrieked between them, scattering her words like ashes. Daniel shook his head. "You wanted silence. But silence doesn't mean peace, Kayla. It means guilt echoing where love used to live." Her breath caught, eyes darting toward the ocean. "You think you're so righteous, but where were you, Daniel, when your wife needed you? You walked away before I ever did." He didn't deny it. "You're right. I failed her first. That's what makes me different from you. I came back." Lightning cracked again, closer this time. The sky flashed white and then dropped to black. For a heartbeat, the 3 of them were only silhouettes, motionless, ghost-like, pieces of a story that had gone too far. Then, from somewhere behind them, a voice cut through the storm. "Dad?" Ethan turned. Zoe stood at the end of the pier, her raincoat too big, her face pale and frightened. She'd followed them. "Zoe, go back to the car!" Ethan shouted, running toward her. "I wanted to see Grandma," she said, crying. "I saw the video. I saw her house. She said she forgave us." Kayla froze, her face draining of color. You what? Zoe's lip trembled. Grandma said she'd come home soon. Daniel's expression softened. She will, but not tonight. Kayla's breathing turned sharp, ragged. No, you're not taking her from me. Ethan turned. Alarm. Kayla. She reached Zoe first, grabbing her arm. Get in the car. Now. Zoe cried harder. Mom, you're hurting me. Kayla, let her go, Ethan yelled, running toward them. But Kayla was past hearing. The panic had turned into something darker, desperation mixed with shame. She looked at the ocean, the pier, the man who'd ruined her, and the child who might one day hate her. Daniel took one step forward, voice calm but urgent. Kayla, listen to me. You can still stop this. Her voice cracked. No, I can't. Ethan lunged forward, prying Zoe from her grip. She's just a kid, please stop. For the first time that night, Kayla's mask slipped completely. She looked like someone who had finally realized there was no way back. You think forgiveness fixes this? She screamed. It doesn't, it never does. She backed away, rain soaking through her clothes, her feet sliding near the slick edge of the jetty. Ethan reached out. Kayla, please. She shook her head, tears mixing with the storm. You'll tell her I tried, right? That I just wanted to be seen? Daniel's hand shot forward. Kayla! But it was too late. Her heel caught the edge. The sound that followed wasn't a scream, it was the thud of a body meeting water, swallowed instantly by the sea's black mouth. Kayla! Ethan shouted, diving toward the edge. The flashlight beam swung wildly, slicing through rain and mist. Nothing, just ripples. Daniel grabbed his arm. You can't see a thing. The tide's too strong. I'm not leaving her. Ethan's voice cracked. She's still alive. He ripped free and jumped. The splash echoed down the pier, then vanished beneath the wind. Zoe screamed. Daniel ran forward, dropping to his knees, searching the surface. Ethan! Ethan! No answer. Only rain. For a long minute, Daniel stared into the waves, the same water that had almost taken his wife, now swallowing his son. Then, faintly, a light flickered beneath the surface, a soft, pulsing glow, like a phone screen drifting up through the dark. Daniel leaned closer, squinting. The light came closer, brighter, and then broke the surface. A phone. Ethan's. Daniel reached out and pulled it from the water. The screen, somehow still alive, showed a single message notification. She's home. He stared at it, breath shaking. Zoe was crying behind him. Grandpa, what does it mean? Daniel looked out at the ocean, at the black horizon swallowing the last of the storm. He whispered almost to himself, it means the sea gave her back what it took. Then, through the rain, a shape appeared, two figures breaking the surface in the distance, one holding the other, both barely visible in the rising light. Ethan and Kayla. Alive. Daniel dropped the phone and ran. As Daniel reached the edge, he saw his son dragging Kayla from the water, her eyes open, her breath trembling, and behind them, through the mist, another silhouette watching from the rocks. The unmistakable outline of Nora. The sun was just beginning to rise, a thin line of gold cutting through the gray ocean mist. The storm had broken, but its ghost still lingered in the air, heavy and electric. Daniel ran, splashing through shallow pools across the jetty. Each footstep echoed between the cliffs like an accusation. Ahead, Ethan was kneeling beside Kayla, his arms around her as she coughed up seawater, shaking and pale. Hold on, Kayla. You're okay, he said, his voice breaking between panic and disbelief. You're okay. She tried to speak, but her lips were blue. All that came out was a whisper. Zoe. Daniel dropped beside them, pulling his jacket off and wrapping it around her shoulders. Zoe's safe. She's in the car. Kayla's eyes darted between them, between the man who had saved her and the one who had destroyed her lies. Why? She gasped. Why did you save me? Ethan looked down at her, eyes full of something she hadn't seen in months, empathy. Because I couldn't lose another person to silence. Kayla blinked, dazed. Silence? He nodded slowly. That's what Mom called it. The space we fill with excuses when we don't want to feel. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for any of this. Daniel exhaled, tired, soaked, but strangely calm. Meaning doesn't undo doing, Kayla, but it's a start. She looked out toward the horizon, where the light was spreading soft, hesitant, like forgiveness itself wasn't sure if it belonged here. And then, from the far end of the rocks, a figure began to move toward them. Slow, deliberate, the morning light outlining her in gold. Nora. Her hair was tied back, her coat buttoned to the chin, her eyes steady, not angry, not triumphant, just heartbreakingly human. Ethan froze. "Mom." Nora stopped a few feet away, her gaze falling on each of them in turn. When she finally spoke, her voice carried like the tide, soft but unyielding. "I didn't come for revenge," she said. "I came because running from pain doesn't heal it. Facing it does." Kayla bowed her head, sobbing quietly. "I don't deserve to face anything." Nora knelt beside her, the gesture small but seismic. "No one does. That's why forgiveness isn't fair, it's mercy." Kayla's breath hitched. She looked up at the woman she'd wronged, expecting hate, and found only weariness. "Why?" she whispered again. "After what I did?" Nora smiled faintly. "Because someone once forgave me when I didn't deserve it either." Daniel's eyes softened. He knew she was talking about him, about all the years he'd been gone, about the night she'd almost frozen because of choices that began long before Kayla came into their lives. A quiet settled among them, broken only by the slow rhythm of the waves. For the first time in a long while, no one was shouting. Ethan turned to his father. "What happens now?" Daniel sighed. "The truth comes out. To the police, to the people online, to whoever needs to hear it. We stop hiding." Nora nodded. "And then we start over, whatever that means." Kayla buried her face in her hands. "I'll lose everything." Nora touched her shoulder gently. "Then you'll finally be free to find something real." Zoe's voice carried from behind them. "Grandma!" All three turned. The little girl was running down the pier, her raincoat flapping behind her like a yellow flag of truce. She threw herself into Nora's arms, clinging tight. "You came back." Nora held her close. "I told you I would." Ethan watched, tears mixing with salt water and rain. For the first time since that morning on the jetty, he didn't feel like a ghost. Daniel put a hand on his son's shoulder. "Let's take them home." Ethan nodded. Together, the four of them walked toward the car, slow, unsteady, but together. The storm was gone now, replaced by a fragile, impossible calm. As they reached the end of the pier, Ethan glanced back one last time. The ocean looked different in daylight, less like a monster, more like a mirror. He could almost see his reflection there, the man he was, and the one he was trying to become. In the distance, the waves lapped gently against the rocks. One of them struck something half buried near the shore, a piece of driftwood tangled with metal. The current turned it just enough for the morning light to catch it. It was Kayla's phone. Cracked, waterlogged, still glowing faintly. The screen flickered once, then displayed a single unread message sent from an unknown number. "The sea never keeps secrets, only lessons." Ethan stood there a moment longer, staring at it. Then he turned back toward his family, the rising sun washing over all of them. Nora reached for his hand. He took it. No words were needed. The waves had already said everything. In the end, it wasn't the ocean that drowned them. It was silence, the kind that grows when truth is left unspoken. But when the tide turned, it didn't bring back the past. It brought something else. A chance. The camera would pull back now, the family walking along the coast, the ocean gleaming behind them like an old secret finally forgiven.